Welcome to the WNBA on NBC. It's Natalie Esquire here in Phoenix, and I'm joined by the wonderful Meghan Hall from USA Today's For the Win. Meghan, thank you so much for joining me. We are in the middle of the WNBA finals, literally. We are switching to game 3 as it pivots to Phoenix, but we have to address some other news that has sort of, I don't want to say been taking away from the WNBA finals, because I've sort of heard people say that this news is overshadowing it, and I don't think it is, but it's almost as big of news as the WNBA finals, and that is this beef, if you will, that is going on between Napheesa Collier and the WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, right? So just right before was it right before the finals started that Napheesa Collier made these comments? It was after her team got eliminated from the semis, and she did her exit interview, and she revealed some comments that she alleges Cathy Engelbert said to her in a private conversation. So just to refresh the record on what that is, right? There was a number of different comments, but one of them was about some of the younger players in the league and how how the commissioner felt about the fact that players like Caitlin, Angel, Paige, they're on these rookie deals and they generate so much revenue for the league, and yet like they're on these like really pretty relatively cheap rookie deals. And according to Napheesa Collier, she says that the WNBA commissioner said Caitlin should be grateful she makes 16 million off the court, because without the platform that the WNBA gives her, she wouldn't make anything. Again, this is according to Napheesa Collier, right? Meghan, and then Caitlin, after Indiana was eliminated, and not before then, she actually declined to comment initially, but she was asked about what Napheesa alleged in her exit interview. And one of the things Caitlin said, of many things, is we need great leadership at this time across all levels. This is the most important time in this league's history. Fee said it all. And many heard and received that as Caitlin in support and standing behind Napheesa Collier. Now, before the WNBA finals began, okay, Meghan, we got to hear from Cathy Engelbert, and she said that when asked about some of these comments, she said that there's a lot of inconsistencies out there, misinformation. But when specifically asked about the Caitlyn comment, like the others, didn't give us like a direct "I didn't say that," or kind of her responses were vague. Here, she seemed to be a little bit more direct and basically said she didn't say those comments about Caitlin Clark. So, there's more to this, but I'm just going to stop right here because that's kind of the backdrop to what's led us to this point and why we're still talking about this situation, Meghan.
Yeah, I mean, in full transparency, I think Cathy Engelbert had to know she was going to be asked about those comments and the conversations with Napheesa Collier. To be very frank with you, Napheesa Collier went scorched earth on Cathy Engelbert and the league's leadership. She talked about as much as everything from pay to the officiating to just the league not meeting the moment, essentially, with the players, and that the ongoing CBA negotiations have not been done, essentially, from the players in good faith. And they're still very much far apart. So I think for Cathy Engelbert, she had to know she was going to get some questions about that. And while she did start her press conference with, kind of addressing the elephant in the room, it was very interesting to me to watch her body language as these questions were asked. While many were probably focusing on her words, I was looking at her body language, and she looked very uncomfortable answering these questions, which I can imagine a lot of pressure to do so. Her eyes also seemed to dart from moment to moment. There were moments where Cathy Engelbert as well was just looking down at the ground, listening to these questions, and then like seemingly waiting to get her answers for them. And so to me, I wasn't quite convinced that she was fully digesting what was happening. It almost felt like she couldn't get through that presser fast enough. And so I think to me, it spoke to just how uncomfortable it was to answer questions about what Napheesa Collier was alleging, and also just it almost somewhat silently admitting, like, yeah, things are not great right now. They're not in the best place with the players. Now, having said that, she did say, hey, I have full confidence in, the players and our relationships, and we believe things will get done. I'm going to put that right here because on the other end is a deadline. There's an October 31st deadline to ratify a new CBA, and it's October 6th as of this date of this recording. And I'm not convinced we're going to get there by October 31st, which means there could be a lockout on the horizon, which is a question I also asked Cathy Engelbert. What does the league plan to do if there is a lockout to potentially continue capitalizing on not just these fantastic several years in growth, but also the storytelling, the marketing? Like, how do you continue all that in the middle of a lockout? And Cathy Engelbert was like, yeah, that's a great question, right? And so I don't know that they necessarily have that full answer right now, but that question's going to get louder. So I just think right now there's more pressure on the league than it is on the players to potentially come to good faith. And so my biggest question now is what happens now, right? We know person reporting with ESPN that Fee canceled her upcoming meeting with Cathy Engelbert after that press conference. Essentially, it's pushed beyond repair. That's the reporting currently. The relationship is pushed beyond repair. So I am very curious to see what happens now. I'm curious what you think too, Nat, as well. Like, what do you think happens next?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's remember you did say that she went scorched earth on the commissioner. And so, she said a number of things, but as you noted, she went scorched earth. And one of those things that she said is, we have the best fans in the world, the best players in the world, but the worst leadership in the world. Very strong statements, Meghan. I mean, that's just a strong statement. Okay. And then, as you know, like you just said, the reporting has been that, we were told that there was going to be a meeting between the commissioner and Napheesa. And then Napheesa apparently has canceled the meeting with the commissioner, and so that reporting says like the trust is, not there right now. And I don't think that's just with Napheesa. That might be with a number of players. We do know that you know, uh, after the commissioner, actually before the commissioner did her press conference, after Napheesa Collier did her presser rather, later that night, the Aces were playing and they closed out their series. But Asia Wilson, came to the podium, and because she was asked about the comments before, and she was honest in that, like, she just hadn't had a chance to listen to it because they were preparing for, a closeout game. But then she said after the game that she had a chance to listen, and she said she was disgusted by what the commissioner reportedly said. And we do know, with respect to at least the comments, one of those being that the players should be on their knees thanking her for the media rights deal that she negotiated. So we don't know which comments Asia was disgusted by, but I'm sure that was not something that, she or any player was pleased to hear. And so, I don't know. Like, it's been said and asked, like, can the commissioner come back from this? Is there coming back from this? Cathy said during her press conference that, she's not a quitter, and there was some reporting from the Sports Business Journal afterwards that that her job may be in jeopardy, which a league spokesperson did refute that reporting. They said that it's, basically unequivocally, like that's just not true. So that right now is the status of that. But, while Napheesa is not the head, we know Nneka Ogwumike is leading the union talk. She's the president for the union on behalf of the players. Napheesa Collier is a part of the union. She sits in a leadership role, and so for her to do this, and my understanding, it was not in consultation. This apparently her conversation with Cathy had been weighing on her for a while, and I know there are some people questioning the timing of when she did this, but nonetheless, it has happened. And the union got behind her very quickly. All the players have gotten behind her. If there is dissension or anyone who's not pleased with those comments, we haven't seen it yet from a player. That has not been stated on the record. Everything on the record seems to indicate that the players are giving full-throated support to Napheesa Collier. So I just don't know. I don't even know how you can negotiate and bargain with this kind of tension existing between the league and the players. So, you know, I expected a lockout. I think there will be a lockout because this is just tensions, right? Among the parties that have to negotiate. But there's just also, in terms of what the players actually want, their biggest thing being revenue share. My understanding is that they're very far apart on that. And so while the commissioner does come into the presser and says, like, yes, we want to pay the players more, how they get to playing the players more, I believe, differs, right? And I think they are finding ways to play the players more without really drastically increasing the revenue share, but it's the revenue share that the players want. That is like that's their number one biggest thing. So yes, while everyone understands they want to make more money, how they make more money, how they get there, I believe the league has a different way of wanting to get them there than the players, but the players want revenue share the same way that the NBA players have it. In my opinion, they deserve that, and it does not seem like that is something they are going to relent on, Meghan. So I think we're headed, for a lockout. I do want to ask you though, Meghan, just Napheesa Collier making these kind of statements and then, canceling, on the commissioner. I think before all of this, it's not that obviously Fee leads a team and I've never not per se thought of her as a leader, but I feel like this is just brought Fee into a new light. Obviously she is a business owner with Unrivaled, but I don't know. Like, to me, this is just like a very pivotal moment, I think, in the league's history. What Napheesa did as a top star in a league is unprecedented. Sure, commissioners have been criticized, but not like this, not so directly, not so pointed, And so to me, it's just a very pivotal moment. And what are your thoughts on Napheesa Collier taking this bold action?
Yeah, I'm still digesting just days later and kind of going back. But there's something I said just a little while ago, and was I really want us to think about what Napheesa Collier did, and I said that for a reason. It was mainly for us to think about Fee is typically a very reserved, very calm, very mild mannered sort of individual, right? She gets competitive, of course, on the court, but like off the court, she is very happy go lucky, very calm, mild, and measured. Even at All Star, when we talk to players at All Star, they were serious about the conversations with the league not going well, but still, it wasn't quite this tone. It wasn't quite this decisive and upfront. It wasn't this sort of, hey, I'm going to go scorched earth and unleash all of these things that I've been sitting on, that I have given you time to allegedly correct or for us to move forward with. And so for me, I thought this was particular, and I've thought about this question about what if these words had come from Nneka Ogwumike? Would they have had the same weight? Would they have had the same sort of ripple effects? And I'm not quite convinced they would have, right? And that's not a slight to Nneka. It's just because Fee is typically so quiet and very calm and laid back in these not just in the games, but in the Players Association work that she does, very in the background, so to speak. So for me, this is pivotal. This is a calculated decision by Fee to use her platform. She knew that there would be eyes on her, there would be media, and she had a platform that she knew that, like, hey, no one was expecting this, so this is probably the time for me to lay things out. And I think what's particularly critical is that it wasn't just about Fee, because I think what we're getting lost is that, yes, and I understand people's arguments about, well, this is a conflict of interest with Unrivaled. This is a conflict of interest with all Fee does. And I really want people to think about, why would Napheesa Collier create a massive conflict of interest with players that she would potentially want to come play in her league? And if you think that she's not going to help them in one and help them in the other, that doesn't make sense to me. If they don't trust you in one league, they're not going to trust you in another. That's kind of my thought process in this. And so this is beyond that. Like, this isn't about necessarily Unrivaled, because I think if it was, you wouldn't have had the reports months ago about the Unrivaled asking the league if it wanted stake and equity in Unrivaled, right? This was about elevating players. This was about making sure players get the money that they have. And I think for Fee, she was strategic in mentioning Paige, Caitlin, Angel as these are essentially conduits for growth, right? Like they are the next generation. So this isn't even really about Napheesa Collier and the players now. This is about the players coming behind her as well. You have an entire generation of players who will need to benefit from the current CBA talk. And I think that's getting lost in this conversation. So for Fee, she is saying essentially, hey, I want y'all to listen. I want y'all to pay attention to what's happening. This has not been happening in good faith, from my opinion. So I think for Fee, it is one of the most, I would say, calculated moves I've seen in recent history, and really across all sports. I'm not quite sure I've seen a player from any sport, and I don't like to use the word eviscerate, but it's probably the best thing I have, eviscerate any current narratives that were on the negotiations, and literally say, hey, you've got to rebuild it from the ground up here. So I don't think this is the last we've probably heard of Napheesa Collier. I'm hopeful that hopefully Fee and Cathy Englebert will get together at some point and maybe hash this out. I'm not saying you've got to, be best friends, but they've got to hash this out at some point, because the fate of the league ultimately rests on it. So, and thinking about all of that, there's a really good chance, of course, like we mentioned, a lockout could happen. And if that's the case, then the question becomes, when will we get out of the lockout, and will it be before the 2026 season?
Yeah. All this does is raise many questions, like you point out. So listen, that's why you gotta make sure that you stay tuned to the WNBA on NBC, and continue to follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you do not miss out. Meghan, thank you so much for joining me on the WNBA on NBC.